Yes, Maharaj, we can hear, but it's little unclear.
Hare Krishna. Okay, I'll Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhara Sivasana Gaura Bhakti. Okay.
Maharaj, should I share the verse, continuation of the verses?
Did we finish verse 23?
Yes, Guru Maharaj. Yeah.
So let's go to verse 24.
Okay, okay, Maharaj.
Yeah, that's it. Your audio is here and video is here.
Okay. Okay. So, Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Saucham tapas titiksam cha. Maunam sadhyayam arjavam. Brahmacharyam ahimsam cha. Sammatvam dvanvasam jayaho. To serve the spiritual master, disciples should learn cleanliness, austerity, tolerance, silence, study of the Vedic knowledge, simplicity, celibacy, nonviolence, and equanimity in the face of material duality such as heat and cold, happiness and distress. I'll read that again. To serve the spiritual master, the disciple should learn cleanliness, austerity, tolerance, silence, study of the Vedic knowledge, simplicity, celibacy, nonviolence, and equanimity in the face of material duality such as heat and cold, happiness and distress. Srila Prabhupada's purport. Saucham, or cleanliness, refers to both internal and external purity. One should remain externally clean by bathing with soap and water at least once, and if possible, 3 times daily. One is considered internally pure when he is free from the pollution of false pride and egotism. Tapa, or austerity, means that despite the irrational impulses of the mind, one should remain fixed in executing his proper duty in life. Specifically, one must control burning anger and the urge for wanton sex life. If a human being does not control the impulses of lust, anger, and greed, he loses his power to understand his actual situation. Human life is a golden opportunity to solve the overwhelming problems of birth, death, old age, and disease. According to Vishnu Purana 389, Vanasramacharya Vata Purushena Param Pumam Vishnu Aradyate Panta Nanatatoshakaranam. Every human being can achieve the spiritual perfection of dedicating the fruits of his prescribed work to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Vishnu. Similarly, in the Bhagavad Gita, Lord Krishna clearly states, Sway Sway Karmana Virita Samsiddhi Labhyate Naraha. One does not have to adopt a monistic life to live in the forest as a yogi. One can achieve perfection by dedicating his occupational duties to the Supreme Lord. Similarly, Bhakti Vinod Thakur has said, Namastraya Kardiyatane to me. Takaha apane kaje. If one sincerely takes shelter of the holy names by chanting Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare. He will achieve spiritual perfection within the compass of normal daily activities. Unfortunately, if human beings neglect the regulative principles of civilized life that prohibit illicit sex, meat eating, intoxication, and gambling, he will be overwhelmed by the waves of lust and anger, which completely cover the consciousness of the reality of spiritual life, and draw one to engage in phantasmagoria of the temporary body. As Lord Krishna states in the Bhagavad Gita, Avritam Gyananam Etena Janino Nityavar Varina Kamarupena Konteya Dusparena Nalena Cha. Thus, a man's pure consciousness is covered by the external enemy in the form of lust, which is never satisfied and which burns like fire. Therefore, the word tapa, or austerity, in this verse indicates that one must remain in his prescribed duty and not become impatient or unregulated due to the waves of lust, anger, and greed. Homagyan timirandasya jana salakaya chaksun militam yena tasmai sri gurave namaha nama om Vishnu padaya Krishna prasnaya bhutale Srimakti Bhakti Vedanta Swami iti namine Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pacharine Nirvisesa Sunyavari Pastyatya Desatarine Vanchakalpa Tarubhishya Kripa Sindhuve Vachapatitanam Bhavebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namaho Namaha Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhar Srivasadi Gaur Bhaktivinoda Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. So here we're hearing from this verse some of the qualities and personal attributes that are needed in order to develop the proper mood and the proper activity of devotional service. When we actually examine devotional service, we see it centers around qualities, characteristics, which indicate a certain consciousness. And there are characteristics and qualities that are conducive to devotional service, and those are in the mode of goodness. And there's others which may be characteristic and qualities of an individual that are in the modes of passion and ignorance, which are more aligned with the secular society for achievement. But here, these qualities are attractive. Cleanliness. So cleanliness, there's two kinds of cleanliness, internal and external. Internal cleanliness means to take a bath regularly every day, keep one's clothes clean, and keep one's area where they live and where they work clean and neat. Cleanliness, sometimes it says cleanliness is next to godliness, but actually cleanliness is godliness because it is an indication of a clean consciousness. If a place is dirty, it's a reflection of one's consciousness. When you come into a clean and organized, neat area, your consciousness is inspired by that automatically. Of course, people who are in the lower modes like things that are dirty, sloppy, messy, untidy, because it reflects the nature of their consciousness. But a devotee understands that everything belongs to Krishna, Therefore, everything should be kept in a very neat and clean atmosphere. That's why Prabhupada made a lot. He said our temples should be revolutionary, clean. He used the word revolutionary beyond the normal standard of cleanliness. And that is required in order to practice Krishna consciousness, because out of all of the qualities of Brahminical life, cleanliness ranks as one of the highest. Cleanliness and truthfulness are one of the two main qualities of Brahminical life. So cleanliness is very important. And then we have external cleanliness of one's surroundings and one's personal, like that. And it's also inspires and attracts others also when things are very clean. And Prabhupada used to say, if you walk into a place that is dirty and you leave without doing anything, you are of the same nature. Says that a Brahmin will walk into a place that is unclean and do some cleaning just because it's like when you try to put water and oil together, it doesn't mix. So those who walk into those who are in the mode of goodness, their consciousness or transcendence, when they walk into an area that's dirty, it's like it's a shock. It's contrary to their consciousness. And so just like you try to mix two things that don't mix, it's the same analogy. So a devotee wants to keep everything clean because he knows everything is meant to be used for Krishna. Cleanliness, orderliness is very important. So that's external, and that should be followed very strictly, carefully. I know certain standards that are given by certain leaders in our movement that are very high standards, that you can't even find one speck of dust anywhere in the room where a devotee lives, not even one speck. It should be that clean, like that. And change your clothes regularly. Keep neat, because it's an impression that we put upon others. And simply by cleanliness, it's a form of preaching. It attracts people to Krishna consciousness. Internal cleanliness, Ms. Prabhupada says, the pollution of false pride and egotism is due to the attachment to the temporary. Due to the attachment to the temporary, one develops a sense of that this belongs to me and that belongs to you. But everything belongs to Krishna, and everything is the property of Krishna, and everything is meant to be used in the service of Krishna accordingly. And that attitude or that understanding or that mindset frees one that from I am the center, because egotism means I am the center, whereas Krishna consciousness means that Krishna is the center, not me. And the false pride means that whatever I am that I have achieved, whatever I am that I have done, is come by way of my efforts. That's false pride. So we know everything says Krishna is the element that makes everything successful. So Krishna is the feature of success in the sense that whatever we do is simply coming by as Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita, I give you knowledge, remembrance, and I also give forgetfulness. The devotee doesn't take credit for anything, so there's no sense of false pride. And tapa, austerity, and of course chanting the holy names of the Lord, that is also the way to keep internally pure. By chanting the holy names of the Lord, hearing the pastimes and activities, qualities of Lord Sri Krishna, purifies the mind, purifies the heart, like that. It says here also that the human being is somewhat controlled by lust, anger, greed, pride, an urge for sexual activities. When one does that, they lose their power to understand anything. These things are like blindfolds. If you're trying to go somewhere, you need to see where you're going. But if one is covered by lust, anger, or greed, it's like walking blindly. There's no direction in that, or it's the wrong direction, actually. So one has to purify themselves from that by chanting the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra, like that. And that allows one, and performing austerity. Austerity is the 4 regulative principles. These are the 4, sometimes we call them the principles of austerity, sometimes we call them the principles of knowledge. Because knowledge means to do the right thing and to avoid the wrong thing. So these principles that are described as the principles of knowledge indicate what should not be engaged in, which takes away our consciousness towards the material and away from Krishna. No intoxication, no illicit sex, no gambling, and no meat eating. These 4 activities are the foundations of all sinful activities, as Srila Prabhupada would say. If you follow these 4 very carefully and strictly, you'll be free from all sinful activities, because all sinful activities reside within these 4. So follow that very carefully. They're foundational. And they help to situate one away from the material energy and towards the spiritual energy. They prevent us from falling back and again engaging in materialistic sinful activities. So it's fundamental. So when you get initiation, you'll see you agree to follow these 4 restrictions, and you agree to chant so many rounds of japan beads every day. So one is elevating the consciousness, and the other one is preventing the consciousness from being degraded again. So you have 2 categories of activities are both important in order to follow the process of devotional service. Sometimes we find devotees don't take these activities very seriously and think if I break a principle, it doesn't really matter. I'm still a devotee. But your consciousness goes down when you do, automatically, because consciousness is a building factor. What it means is, as you develop in your Krishna consciousness, you're building your Krishna consciousness. It's like painting a picture. When you start, all you have is a canvas. And then you have your colors, and you have your ideas. But as you start painting, then the canvas starts to turn into something visual. So when we build our Krishna consciousness, it's like painting a picture. Gradually, we're coming to the point where we'll see something very clear. And that clearness we'll be able to have darshan with Krishna. When we see the deity, do we actually see the Lord, or do we see just some statue? When we chant the holy names, do we actually see that this name is non-different than Krishna? Or we simply think it's just a series of names? So this austerity leads to bhakti. Knowledge leads to austerity. Austerity leads to bhakti. Basic knowledge. Transcendental knowledge takes you right to Krishna. But basic knowledge teaches you you're not this body, and you are not the different designations that the body indicates. nor are you connected with anything in this material world in a real sense. In other words, you're not an American, you're not an Indian, you're not anything designated. You're simply Sivar Sarupai Krishna Nichida. This is basic knowledge. And that basic knowledge helps us to perform austerity so we can cut away from these wrong conceptions of ourselves and the identities that force us to act in the materialistic way. Austerity, they say austerity is the wealth of the Brahminical class. So it's a form of wealth because it allows us to situate ourselves nicely in devotional service. Sometimes people think austerity means to punish oneself through denial. I was just talking a few minutes ago to one Islamic girl. We are here at the Avanti School in Croydon in South London. And so she's a new teacher, and this is the month of Ramadan. So their austerity for this month is that they can only eat after sunset. So through the whole day, they don't eat anything. And then sunset, they're allowed to eat one meal, and then the next day, the same thing. And they can drink a little, they don't drink any water, and they don't drink any food. This goes on for 30 days. So this austerity helps to purify the body. It allows for the soul to not to be covered simply by the activities of bodily needs. It's good for health. It's also good for purifying the consciousness. And then when we add Krishna to the consciousness, then the consciousness becomes clear. So one should accept austerities. And then it's mentioned there's austerities of speech, there's austerities of the body, and there's austerities of the mind. All of these are described nicely in the 17th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita. Some of the other activities that are there for devotee is, go down the page a little farther, and you come to Titikshava, tolerance. So tolerance indicates that a transcendental must be forgiving. The material world is full of embarrassing and irritating situations, and unless one is inclined to be very much forgiving, that person will become infected by the vindictive or the vengeful mentality which spoils one's spiritual consciousness. So people will do things to us, people will misunderstand us. And it's just the way the world is. Even the best of friends, even the closest of people misunderstand each other or offend each other, and one has to learn to be forgiving. If we're not forgiving, then we think of ways to retaliate, and that is completely on the platform of the mode of tamas, ignorance. And that Prabhupada says, it spoils one's spiritual consciousness. It just doesn't, stop it. It spoils it. So it takes a while to build spiritual consciousness. We don't want to do anything to spoil it. So tolerance is a very elevated principle that needs to be practiced regularly. One has to learn to tolerate. Silence means that one should not speak on worthless or frivolous topics, but should discuss the actual issues of human life, such as going back home, back to Godhead. Remaining completely silent is a symptom of ignorance. So here's a stone is silent due to lack of consciousness. Since every material thing has a spiritual counterpart, the Vedic Shastras contain negative and positive injunctions. So don't speak, but speak about Krishna. Don't speak uselessly, frivolously, nonsensically, or materially, but speak about Krishna or speak about devotional service. Corresponding to that negative injunction against speech is the positive injunction that one should speak about Krishna. Satatam Kirtayanto Mam is from the Bhagavad Gita. One should always speak about the Lord, glorify his holy names, fame, pastime, entourage, etc. Nishtotavav kirtitastas devya pujas chanityada. One should always hear about, glorify, meditate upon, and worship the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna. If we're doing that all the time, we are situated nicely in Krishna consciousness. And Prabhupada says, verse 21, which we already done, Sabde Chipare Cha Nishnatma, spiritual master is expert in Sabde Pare, or transcendental sound vibration, describing the spiritual world. So he describes what it's like in the spiritual world and also the process for attaining that. One cannot artificially remain empty-headed or speechless, as advocated by foolish proponents of concocted systems of meditation and yoga. But one should be so absorbed in serving Krishna and so lovingly attracted to praising Krishna, and then one doesn't have time to speak nonsense. That is the purport of the word mana. Okay, so we'll stop there and we'll continue tomorrow with the rest of the qualities. And we'll open it up. Cleanliness, tolerance, austerity are the three things we covered today in our discussion.
Hare Krishna Maharaj, thank you so much for today's class and explaining about these qualities. Thank you so much for giving a class from the school. Thank you, Maharaj. Raj Prabhu has raised his hand. Prabhuji, please go ahead.
Thank you very much. Hare Krishna Maharaj. Please accept my humble obeisances. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. All glories to you, Maharaj. All glories to all the devotees. Yeah. I thought it was interesting, Maharaj, when you're talking about these qualities, that some of them, they're also qualities that materialists practice very expertly. For example, you talk about cleanliness of the body and their surroundings. Many of them are very expert in this in order to, and put a great deal of time and effort in order to attract the opposite sex. And like austerity, so many materialists work so hard at like building a strong, fit body, or earning, or making lots of money, etc. So how can we relate to these qualities?
Well, these qualities, the qualities have negative and positive principles attached to them. You know, the demons perform austerity too. We were hearing yesterday about Hiranyaksha, what were his austerities that he performed in order to become powerful. Hiranyakashipu performed tremendous austerities. But austerity is there for the non-devotees also. But when it's used in Krishna consciousness, it elevates one towards the transcendental realm. And when it's done for a material purpose, it makes one successful in the material world. So people who know that if they have a desire to achieve material success, they perform some austerity. Politicians will give up their things that they want to do and just to campaign, and they'll travel around, they'll meet people, they'll pat babies on the head, they'll do all kinds of things. Why? Because they want that office. They'll give up their sleep. But it's all about, material gain. So yeah, but devotees perform austerity in order to be situated free from the effects of the material imagery. Austerity it has to be there. So we
Okay.
follow the four regulative principles. They are the four regulative principles. And for some, it's more natural, and others it becomes difficult. But everyone must follow, because if we want Krishna consciousness, we have to get off the bodily platform.
Okay. So the qualities themselves are good. It's just that they're used incorrectly by many people.
That's true with anything, mostly. Money is Lakshmi, but money used for sense gratification will bring one to hell.
Thank you, Maharaj.
A knife,
Oh,
Maharaj, we lost your volume suddenly. We
we are
couldn't
not.
hear.
Uh, Maharaj, we are not able to hear your voice. We cannot hear you.
Haribol.
Yes.
can you hear now?
Yes. Now we can hear.
Okay. We have people who are very intelligent, but they use it to exploit others. That's called duskrit.
Again, we lost the volume. Hare Krishna Maharaj, again we. Okay.
Sorry, Maharaj, we cannot hear you.
Sorry, for some reason this start to disconnect, but let's see. I think it should be fine now.
Is it okay?
Yes.
Yes,
Yes,
I can hear you.
Okay.
Why? Sridevi Mataji, would you like to go ahead?
Thank you. Please accept my humble obeisances, dear Guru Maharaj. All glories to Prabhupada and all glories to Guru Parampara. Thank you so much, Guru Maharaj, for this austerity of giving us your mercy every day with the travel schedule, with the demands of your time on so many different things. Still, every day you perform this austerity of coming online and giving class. I was just reflecting that it's hard for me some days to just tune in sometimes, but you're always ready to give us your mercy. And this is a very big austerity given how difficult your travel schedule is. So we are so grateful for your mercy, Guru Maharaj.
I'm at a Avanti school today in London. We were just giving class to about 130 kids. They're all around between the ages of 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. And so we were here, and then Rishabh Dave said, "Oh, it's 12 o'clock. Time for the class." So he gets all the credit.
No, not Prabhu.
Can you get that out?
Sure. I was
Yeah.
thinking like if.
Okay. I don't do anything. In fact, I like doing this, so it's not an austerity.
As Raj Prabhu says, you have come to visit us in our prison cells and give us light of transcendental knowledge and give us hope of a better world. Thank you so much, Guru Maharaj, for bringing the transcendental sound vibration into our lives.
Haribo. Can I have one question, by any chance?
We have a question from somebody who's sitting next to me here.
I will just pop here. Hello. Hare Krishna, dear devotees. Maharaj, yeah, I really like this, what you said, austerity, well establish ourselves in devotional life. And I think I'm doing something wrong, trying to do austerities, but I guess in a mode of ignorance, because let's say I'm trying to be like more established in eating, sleeping, mating, and defending, but I feel like I'm doing it wrongly.
Regulate it.
Regulate it.
If you regulate the bodily activities, that's how you can control them. That's austerity. They have to be regulated. Even the animals are regulated, but they're regulated by the force of nature, and it's natural. But for us, we have higher consciousness, so we can choose how to regulate or not regulate. So we should be aware that by regulation, you become purified from the effects of these things, because they're the bodily activities.
And sometimes when I focus on, let's say, trying to regulate my eating, I end up constantly thinking about eating. So is it more that maybe doing more devotional things and
yeah, what you're doing is what most people do. They eat too much, and so they just stop trying to eat nothing at all.
Okay.
It's called Bhoga Tiyaga.
Oh,
You swing from one side to the other.
understand.
You suffer from eating too much, so then you wind up eating too little, and you're always hungry. So you have to find that regulation which works for you best, and that sometimes it takes time. You have to, so it's a process of understanding and experience based on the understanding.
Oh, thank you very much.
Yeah, but it has to be done, otherwise it interferes with your spiritual life. Don't take sannyas. You can't regulate your eating, because everybody tries to feed you all the time.
So stay brahmachari forever.
Yeah, that way you don't have to. You can make your own meals. That way you'll be happier.
Thank you.
Okay, any other questions? It's cleanliness, austerity, and what was the other one we did? Tolerance.
Forgiveness. Yeah. Silent.
Two kinds of tolerance. The tolerance that comes by way of having a material body, which are the kleshas that are forced upon us, the problems of the body and mind, the problems of other living entities, the problems that come by higher powers. One has to learn to tolerate these just by living in the material world. These difficulties are imposed upon us. But there's another kind of tolerance that comes by way of understanding that Krishna sometimes puts his devotee in a difficult situation in order to cut away some material attachments or to purify the devotee from something. And that's a higher form of intolerance that comes directly from Krishna. And it comes in the form of some type of suffering. But that suffering is actually good, because it teaches one how to live life in Krishna consciousness, something like that. So that kind of tolerance is, it's tate nukampa shushimikshamanam bhujan eva kritam vipakam ridva vahupir vidadan namaste jiveti yo mukti padesha dayabak. The devotee actually thanks Krishna for that, for these difficulties which help them to become more and more attached to Krishna and more detached from material life. So that Krishna orchestrates that directly for the devotee. That's another form of tolerance, which is different than the tolerance that we have to undergo due to simply having a material body. But that tolerance will get you back to Godhead.
How to distinguish?
So the question is how to distinguish. It's you can see what happens. If it's heat and cold, obviously it's coming by way of the body. And sometimes it's not so clear which form of tolerance, but doesn't matter. Still, you have to tolerate in either case. And tolerance also takes the form of knowledge. We tolerate, and we get higher knowledge about how to move forward in life despite the difficulties that we undergo. So that kind of tolerance is there. So we see something that's coming our way, we don't like it, but we understand that by trying to fight it, we go down or we become entangled in the whole idea. Just like Prabhupada says that sometimes someone does something to you, so you have to learn how to be forgiving. If you're not forgiving, then you're vindictive. That means you have a vengeful attitude. And in that vengeful attitude, you fall down into the lower modes, trying to retaliate some difficulty that was imposed upon you by another.
Maharaj, is it that when you get initiated, especially Brahman initiated, that
Any more questions coming from devotees?
yes.
Yes, Shri Devi Mataji has another question.
Guru Maharaj, on the subject of cleanliness, if I may humbly request some help, because I am not a very clean, yes, reasonably clean, but neatness, orderliness, things like this, I don't know, I have a defective gene or something.
No, it's not. That's not the problem. You got too much stuff. That's all.
Okay.
You told me that so many times, so I'm just reminding you. That's all.
Yes, Guru Maharaj. Give
Yeah,
it
that's
away.
one. If you
Put
have
it away.
too much stuff, it's hard to organize it, and then it becomes
Yes.
messy. Or yeah.
Okay, Guru Maharaj. I'll keep
You
things
told me
ordered.
that, so I'm just reminding you.
Okay, thank you. I need the reminders. My humble obeisances. I'm such a donkey. Nothing gets into my head, Guru Maharaj. But now I will try. I'll try to give away some of my.
Uh, uh, we have Devananda Prabhu who has raised his hand. Prabhuji,
Here,
please.
Yeah, go back to the gallery.
yes, it's you have gallery here. This one. Yeah. That.
Devananda, you have a question? What happened?
We do you hear us?
You're on mute, Devananda.
I'm sorry.
Okay.
Can I ask a question or another devotee asking?
Yeah, please.
The question is, how can we be tolerant to invaders who came to our country to kill us, to destroy our cities? That is the question.
Well, that's not tolerance, that's foolishness. If somebody wants to kill you and you say, I'm just being tolerant, that's foolishness. That's not tolerance. Yeah, that's not tolerance at all. What happened here?
No, just stay muted because he kind of recognizes that you're speaking, but he doesn't know that we are. Yeah.
It says that if someone wants to do you harm and you allow them to do harm to you, you're just as guilty as they are.
Live streaming.
You have a right to protect yourself. You have a right to defend yourself.
We should avoid harming the person.
Any other questions?
Anyone else has any question or comment or realization? Request devotees, please turn on the cameras if possible.
It's 8 to 1.
Raj Prabhu has raised his hand again.
Who's that?
Raj Prabhuji.
Oh, Raj. Okay. Where are you, Raj? I don't see you. Okay.
My video's on.
Okay, let's see. Oh, there you are. Okay.
I have a comment based on something I experienced based on the discussion. I think, Maharaj, that when you're talking about the lower lusty desires and impulses, I think that all lusty desires and impulses disappear when Maharaj is in town. So every town and village needs you, Maharaj.
That's not from Shastra. You're speaking nonsense.
I just
If that was from Shastras, everyone would agree with you, but it's not. So not everybody agrees with that one. So it's.
We agree with Raj Prabhu, Guru Maharaj. We heartily agree with Raj Prabhu.
You're also brainwashed too.
We have fanatics.
I'm happy to be brainwashed by Srila Prabhupada's instructions coming through you, Guru Maharaj.
All right, if you want to, you're happy being ignorant, that's good. We say ignorance is bliss, right?
With you around, Guru Maharaj, everything is bliss.
And everything is amiss, not bliss. Amiss. It's another word that sounds like bliss, right? Yeah. Just talk to Krishna. Just ask Krishna, he'll tell you. He said a guy just runs around making a lot of trouble, that's all.
Very well. You're following your footsteps.
Maharaj, Namrata Mataji has raised her hand. Mataji, would you like to go ahead?
Amrita, Haribo, Jai-ho. Now here's a saint. If you want to meet a saint, there's a saint right there, Namrata. She's a saint. I'm just like a lost Serb.
Please accept my humble obeisances. All glories to Shri Prabhupada. At least I partially agree with Raj Prabhu. Although the statement is
You're only half brainwashed. You're not fully. It's partially.
But we experience that, Maharaj. So, okay, Maharaj, my question was, which might raise quite a frequent time, that when do we, how do we understand that when to tolerate and when not to tolerate?
That's a very good question. And that requires intelligence. It's something you can't just formulate into a sentence and expect to apply that. Therefore, you have to see the situation, you have to see what is involved, and sometimes you have to speak up. Just like sometimes someone would say to Prabhupada, well, I'm God. And Prabhupada said, well, please accept my obeisances, Mr. God, now sit down, you know. So there's another time Prabhupada, someone said, I am God. Prabhupada said, well, that's nice, but we know another God who's better than you. His name is Krishna. So, you know, Prabhupada would defend the philosophy and not just simply tolerate a person's ignorance. One time, sometimes people would criticize. One time, Prabhupada was talking about first-class men. He was saying we have to become first class. This was at an open forum. There were many people who had just come. I think it was at a college. And one student got up and said, well, you think you're first class. They challenged Prabhupada. Prabhupada said, no, I'm not first class. I'm fifth class because I'm servant of the other four classes. So sometimes one tolerates, sometimes one responds by clarifying the situation. Sometimes when it involves many people, we have to speak up for the benefit of the other people when someone is speaking wrongly. And sometimes we have to remain quiet. So it's a situation where it requires some understanding and some thoughtfulness. There's no particular answer for that question other than one has to learn that tolerance is a quality that is applied to improve the situation, but remaining silent in certain situations makes the situation worse. So there's some discrimination there. Just like it says, there's a Chinese saying, it's a weakness to speak when you should remain silent, and it's a weakness to remain silent when you should speak. So the answer is you have to really understand the situation. And you also have to see how tolerance applies or doesn't apply to a particular situation. If your children are calling you bad names, you don't tolerate that, because it's bad for them that they get the wrong attitude, they behave in the wrong way. So if you have to say something to stop that, so they learn. So you're not defending yourself, you're acting in the right way to set things right. So sometimes in order to set things right, we avoid becoming tolerant.
Maharaj, higher purpose, does higher purpose, Maharaj, am I audible?
Yeah, I have to hear carefully. Yeah.
Maharaj, higher purpose, does this factor include when we consider tolerance?
Yeah. Wants to set things straight again, put things on the right path, clarify things and make things right. So tolerance has to be applied according to circumstance. You know, some people say, well, the Indian culture is very tolerant. They allow so many foreigners to come in. And so sometimes that's wrong. So just like the British were saying to the Indians that the Germans are coming, what are you going to do? And one British man and one Indian man, he was a leader there, he said, well, when you can come, we said, come on, come in. And so when they come, we're going to say the same thing. So that's foolishness. So we have the Indian culture is very tolerant because they never close their doors to outsiders. But then again, you have the Battle of Kurukshetra, where Krishna was not tolerant of the Kurus, which were trying to push out the Pandavas and take over the throne unfairly. But Krishna said, you have to fight. Arjuna wanted to be tolerant.
Okay, Maharaj. I think intelligence is the thing, I think, key thing which comes from the Shastras, Guru, Sadhu and Shastra, which will help intelligence and when not to be tolerant.
Yeah, you have to see the situation and apply that knowledge. Sometimes tolerance is there, and sometimes tolerance takes the form of speaking out.
Yes, Maharaj. Okay.
Thank you. Is that clear?
Yes, Maharaj. Just one follow-up. In our surrounding, many times it happens that people don't exactly abuse, but they tend to maybe rebel or speak slightly in a critics for ISKCON or the devotees of ISKCON. How should we
you should defend that. You should speak against them.
We should defend. Oh.
Yeah. I mean, if they're criticizing you, you might be tolerant, but if they're criticizing Prabhupada or the mission or other devotees, then you're not tolerant.
Okay, Maharaj. Thank you. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Yes. Thanks, yeah.
Okay, so we can stop here, and we'll see you all tomorrow for another episode. I'll be somewhere else, but I'll be here, hopefully. Okay, have a wonderful day, and take shelter of Krishna's holy name. Don't let the mind wander on useless thoughts and subjects. Just keep connected with Krishna, and you're always in the best position to do the right thing and to experience happiness. Always remember Krishna.
Thank you, Maharaj.
Hare Krishna.
Thank you for today's class, despite your hectic schedule, Maharaj. Thank you so much. Thank you, devotees, for joining.
Thank you. It's nice to see all the devotees. I see Nishringa Leela. She looks quite peaceful. Everything's okay?
My humble obeisances, all glories to Srila Prabhupada. Yes, everything is okay. We can
Good.
tolerate. Please.
You can give a class on tolerance, I think.
Only by your instructions and mercy. Yeah.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Okay. Hare Krishna.
Yes.
Hare Krishna. Thank you, Guru Maharaj.
Hare, 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 Hare.
Thank you, Guru Maharaj. Hare Krishna.
Haribo.
Thank you, Guru Maharaj, for giving class after you're not feeling well as well. Are you taking rest or not?